we normally think we function in time, but actually, time functions in us. When we look at time, it's a construct of thought, and when we all collectively agree on a certain thought structure, it becomes fixed as time, and we have different time zones and so on. So, our being is always free of time, and we somehow lose sight of it and we think we are functioning in time, which is the root ignorance, which causes us to forget our true nature. So, when we turn back and look into our own being, we notice that all these changes, including the change of time today, um, are all happening within the light of our being. There is a space within us, the heart of our being, which is completely untouched by time and simply remains unaffected, just remains as the light. And that is the eternal now. So, now then is not present moment, even. Normally, there is a tendency to say, and it has its use in a certain way, like many meditation techniques, there is a tendency to focus on the present moment, saying that past and future are illusion and present is real. But in reality, even the present moment is simply an appearance in the now. The now is not the present moment, the now is eternal. It is not past, present, or future. It is that in which nothing happens, and yet everything happens. It's a paradox because it is in the light of awareness that everything seems to happen, and yet when we abide as the awareness from that light, nothing really happens. All there is light, all there is awareness, and that awareness alone is, and that's the eternal now, the eternal here. So it's not even then about being in the now, as some people talk about it, because there is this, when we say being in the now, we it really, the mind takes it as being in the present moment, which is fine. As we said, it has its own um, benefits, but really what self-inquiry points to is being as the now. We are the now. There is nothing other than the now. And when we recognize our true nature, that is, the true nature is here, it's now, it's timeless, it's spaceless, and it is simply abiding as itself. And it's not some dry philosophy by any means. It's the most practical thing for us to be free of all the various movements of the mind and the suffering it can produce. Um, Even little things to big things. So when we are, um, let's say, presented with a good meal, how do we approach it? These are very, very simple things, but that can that we can use, that we can employ this teaching of self-inquiry to turn back and not be caught in the sensory pleasure of enjoying a meal, let's say. Just so when we are, there is a, when we are identified with the senses, then we want to consume more, we want to enjoy more, and so on. But when we turn back and look at the space right in that moment, the space of awareness in which the enjoyment takes place, and recognize that the space of awareness is our being, not the enjoyer through the senses, then there is instantly an immediate sense of calm, and we don't end up doing unhealthy things like overeating and all the rest. So it's a very simple example that occurred to me yesterday when I was in the midst of some people and there was a good dinner and so on. So when we look at little to big events in life, good and bad, pleasurable and painful, the tendency of the mind is to indulge in pleasures and then say why there is pain. But if we recognize that the same tendency that indulges in pleasure is what creates pain, and therefore to be dissociated from both pleasure and pain, I think that's the real pointer of this teaching that Ramana Maharishi has given us, and the it's been perennially available also. So when we look at it every moment in a very practical way as to who is aware of this activity, that brings us right back home. And so that's why this question, who am I, is not some uh, is not even Vedanta, as some people claim. See, Vedanta is a system of, or Buddhism similarly. There are many systems of philosophy where there is a lot of um, very deep philosophical exposition of non-duality, and all that is great. But Ramana Maharishi didn't encourage reading much of all that. He said, all you need is one question, who am I? And we think that, you know, is it that simple? But actually it is that simple when we realize the power of that question. And when we can go back to that question every moment, literally, and then um, recognize our true space or true being. And when we do that, then we are already free. We are not looking to be free, we are free already. The one looking to be free will never be free. That is the key paradox here. So the moment we recognize who we are already free. If we identify with the one looking to be free, it's like chasing a shadow. We never catch it. So that's the real essence of self inquiry that Ramana Maharishi gave us. As I said, it's been available in many traditions. Uh, Many great masters have come. The unique grace of Sri Ramana Maharishi is that he made it so clear, so simple, so direct, that it's available for everyone. I mean, we have people from all nations of the world, all religions, all languages being able to access, because everybody knows I. That's what Ramana Maharishi used to say. You don't need, everybody knows the sense of existence, that I exist, and that needs no language even. So, inquiring into our own existence and recognizing that our existence is not what we take ourselves to be, not the activities of the body, not the activities of the mind, not the meditation practices we take upon, not the seeking we do. All of this are happening within the unconditional, ever pure awareness of our being. And if we can recognize this by grace, then we are already free. And we have to also recognize the sacredness of this, because this is not something that is a great mystical experience, for instance, that comes with bells and whistles. It's simple silence, it's peace, it's shanti. And so we tend to ignore it because it seems like it's so obvious. But and that's the beauty of it. It is our obvious eternal nature. And we always look for something more interesting because we don't recognize the peace and the sacredness of our own silence, our own peace, our heart. So Ramana Maharishi said once that once you found the cool shade of a tree, why do you keep going back into the scorching heat of the sun? So it's not that we are actually even seekers, because seeking means we don't know where our home is. We already know our home. But the mistake we make is we keep leaving our home by falsely identifying with various activities of the mind, and then get burned by the heat of it. We, of course, do come back to the shade. So, one easy way in which everyone comes to the shade is through deep sleep. When we are in deep sleep, we are in the shade, in the cool shade of our own being. And there are, everyone tastes this silence. It's not something special, actually, that you need a lot of meditation to glimpse into, because it's our own being. As I said, everybody goes into this in deep sleep. So it's as simple as that. The only question is, can I be awake and remain in the same awareness? And that's the beauty of this pointer. So when we recognize that this silence, this our heart that is free of everything, is always here and now, and it's sacred, and it is what we are looking for, and we superimpose that with all various ideas, various theories, various philosophies, and keep looking without recognizing the home in which we already are. So if we can recognize the sacredness of the home of our being, and also the tiresome, scorching heat of false identification with that which we are not, then everything falls in place. Of course, activities go on. It's not that everything stops, things go on in their own way. What stops is identification. Even if we take the word conditioning, which we've talked about, conditioning doesn't stop, but identification stops. Even Krishna says in the Gita, Swabhavastu Vartate, which means the conditioning is there even for, apparently there even for a jnani. When we look at Ramana Maharishi, for instance, he was speaking in certain languages, he was cooking certain foods. All of this is conditioning working in its own way naturally, but he was never identified with it. It was the activities of the body, the mind going on, and he was in fact extremely active outwardly. So the paradox is that when we stop identifying with activities, activities happen most efficiently, and yet we remain as who we are. This is the pointer of Bhagavan Ramana, and it, it is nothing new, but it's always fresh. And we can look into this every week, every moment, and keep coming home until we just abide as home.